I'd like to welcome everybody back in consideration of the recommendations. Firstly, from the floor, I'd like to say thank you to you all for your attendance and especially your input over the last couple of days with regard to the budget scrutiny. I believe that the most important thing for me, as long as everybody's happy and they believe it's been a fair and fair process, then I'm happy myself. If I can hand over to Ross now, just to run through the recommendations and seek agreement that this is what we will be taking forward to Cabinet for consideration in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So a number of recommendations to go through. I think the committee decided you'd like to vote on each of those in turn. So what I will do is read out the recommendations. Chair, if you're then happy to ask for a show of hands, we'll record that, and depending on that vote will be the recommendations that go to Cabinet on the 9th of February. So the first is reference equalities impact assessments. The committee is aware of the requirements of the legislation in respect of equalities impact assessments. The committee recommends that EIAs in support of the budget should refer to the most recent census data available where appropriate to the EIA, that the impact of potential council tax increases upon those with protected characteristics should be more clearly defined, and also include the potential opportunities to improve the understanding of and foster good relationships between different groups in the community. Whilst the budget itself contains proposals rather than decisions on service changes, the executive is recommended to consider carefully its public sector equality duty, in particular that due regard is fulfilled before and at the time a particular policy or operational activity that will or might affect people with protected characteristics is under consideration, as well as the time a decision is taken. So essentially what you're saying there, committee, is you think some of the proposals should be included in the EIA. So over to you, Chair.
Can I have a vote of hands on the equalities and impact assessments, please?
Unanimous, thank you, Chair. Next recommendation concerns home building. The committee recommends that the executive should set out an ambitious, significant and sustainable home building programme to ensure that the city's housing stock keeps pace with its social, economic and environmental ambitions. Over to you, Chair.
Can I have a vote, please, on the home building?
That's unanimous, thank you, Chair. This recommendation is reference working balances. The consequences of not keeping minimum prudent levels of balances can be serious, and in the event of a major problem or a series of events, the council would risk run a serious risk of a deficit or being forced to cut spending during the year in a damaging and arbitrary way. The external audit report provided to the Audit and Governance Committee highlights that the current level of reserves is insufficient. The committee therefore recommends that the Section 151 officer should undertake a review of the level of working balance. As a part of this review, the 151 officer should consider the best practice as advised by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, the Local Government Association, and review against our SIPFA comparator group. The output of the review should be included in the draft budget when presented to Council, and the production of a robust and transparent plan to recover future contributions to working balances to be set out in the MTFS.
I'd like to open up to the floor a vote on the working balances, please.
Unanimous, thank you, Chair. The next recommendation is reference to medium-term financial plan. The committee recommends that a 3-year medium financial plan is prepared and considered at full council in September. This reflects similar recommendations made through the LGA Corporate Peer Challenge and External Auditors Report. The committee expects the effect of this recommendation to reduce reliance on one-off savings in the annual budget setting process. And in addition, recommendations from external auditors are endorsed by the Budget Select Committee. The committee recommends that the chair of the Audit and Governance Committee addresses these recommendations in their next report to Cabinet.
Can I have a vote, please, on the medium-term financial plan?
Thank you, Chair. Climate emergency assessment. The committee believes that climate impact should be adequately reflected in the budget papers or those supporting decision making. The committee were made aware that decision making processes would include an assessment of climate impact, and a tool had been developed for implementation. The committee recommended that an assessment of climate impact is included in the budget report as presented to Council, that the tool for assessing climate impact of decision making is implemented with urgency, and appropriate resources identified to quality assure such assessments.
A vote, please, climate emergency and assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Unanimous. Fleet decarbonisation programme. The committee recommends that the executive set this as a high priority for the council and explores further opportunities for the decarbonisation of the fleet through the capital programme.
A vote, please.
Unanimous. Thank you, Chair. School transport. The committee recommends that the executive review options for school transport, in particular how young people may be supported to travel independently where appropriate.
School transport, vote, please.
Unanimous. Thank you, Chair. Children's Services budget. The committee is not assured that the proposed budget for 23-24 is sufficient. As such, the committee recommend that the draft budget is developed to include further information so as to assure members of the robustness of the Children's Services budget as will be proposed to Council. This should take into account all relevant future impacts, including impact of the cost of living crisis, the output of any Ofsted inspection, and the success of the drive to increase the number of in-house fostering provision.
Services budget, vote, please. Carried by majority.
Carried by majority. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, let's. We'll take those members against, please.
Chair, could you record that all the Conservative group here did not vote for it?
So is that abstentions?
Yeah. Is that abstentions or votes against? Abstain.
Your vote, Chair?
Yes. Yeah.
Abstention?
Yeah.
5 abstentions. Carried. Thank you, Chair. Right, sorry, Chair. Moving on to work experience. The committee recommends that Council significantly increases the availability of work experience and apprenticeship placements for care experienced young people to help them into employment, and to review the social value policy to reflect this.
Vote on work experience, please. Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank you, Chair. This concerns local care partnership. The committee recommends to local care partnership that the principles which have driven the alliance contract are embedded within the development of the local care partnership.
Alliance contract local care partnership, vote, please.
Unanimous. Thank you, Chair. This recommendation is reference NHS capital funding. The committee recommends to the Health and Wellbeing Board that it should use all of the levers available to it to ensure adequate capital and revenue resources are directed to Plymouth. The Health and Wellbeing Board is asked, as a first step, to require NHS Devon to provide the ICP Joint Capital Resource Plan at the next meeting of the Health and Wellbeing Board to ensure planned capital resources being aligned against local Plymouth priorities.
NHS capital funding, vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unanimous. Next recommendation is reference elections. The committee recommends that adequate resources for the delivery of new burdens in relation to the election process, e.g. identification requirements, are clearly identified within the draft budget as presented to Council.
Elections, vote, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Regarding take-up of free school meals, the committee recommends a communications campaign is implemented to increase uptake of free school meals.
Take up free school meals vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Corporate property. The committee discussed corporate property and the potential of alternative uses of the estate. The committee recommends that a review of corporate estates is undertaken in line with the council corporate objectives and specifically identifies if any potential buildings are capable of being developed to provide residential care homes for young people in the care of the local authority, and where buildings are found to be surplus to the requirements of the authority, the executive will ensure that overage agreements are put in place where appropriate with buyers and developers.
Corporate property vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yeah, that was a unanimous vote on corporate property. So we're moving on to balancing the budget. The committee expresses its concerns that where savings in the budget are subject to public consultation, they may not be delivered.
On balancing, please vote, please.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4.
And 5 against.
Is that 5 against or abstentions?
Abstentions. As noted.
So that's a majority.
Carried by majority.
Following, the next recommendation concerns the councillors' community grant scheme. The committee wish to recommend no changes to the community grant scheme and for it to remain at its current level.
Councillor Community Grant Scheme, a vote.
That's unanimous.
Unanimous decision made.
Thank you, Chair. Concerning residential disabled parking bays, following consideration, ask the Cabinet member to review the fees and charges for residential disabled parking bays.
Can I have a vote, please?
Unanimous?
Unanimous.
Following discussion around footpaths, ask the Cabinet member to review the level of funding within the budget for footpath maintenance and resurfacing.
Vote, please. Unanimous.
Unanimous. And finally, oh no, not quite finally. Not quite finally. The committee is recommending that additional empty homes premium, that is the empty homes premium that is collected after the 2-year period, is ring-fenced to deliver ambitions to bring empty homes back into use.
Vote, please.
It's unanimous.
Carried unanimously.
And finally, Chair, concerning local housing allowance, the committee acknowledges that many Plymouth residents struggle to find appropriate rented accommodation within the local housing allowance limits set by the Valuation Office. The committee recommends that the Cabinet member lobby government for changes so the LHA more accurately reflects the strength of the local rental market.
Have a vote, please.
6 in favour, Chair. Those against?
6.
That's. Is that 6? 1? Well, I mean, I just saw hands doing this. So this is against. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you, Chair. You have cast in vote.
I vote against.
And that recommendation falls. That concludes the recommendations, Chair. You'll be attending Cabinet on the 9th of February to make representations on behalf of the committee, which Cabinet is at liberty to accept or reject, and they may well make their way into the final budget report at Council.
Councillor Lowe?
Just on terminology, Chair, there are a number of occasions when we've referred to abbreviations within the recommendation. I'm sure the officers will address that when the report's produced for not just Cabinet but for the general public. So we've used things like LHAs, ICBs and so on and so forth, where many people outside this room won't entirely understand. So hopefully we'll address that in the final write-up. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to finally say as well, in regards to say the last aspect there, as it was noted by the Cabinet member, that lobbying will continue, that within the preamble that the points raised will actually be made known to the Cabinet member responsible when it's presented to Cabinet. So the views of everybody's taken into consideration. Again, like I said, a big thank you to you all for your time and your effort put in, and I think it's been a worthwhile experience. And as and when the outcomes are published by Cabinet on the aspects raised, we'll bring it straight back to the individuals.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to thank the Chair and the Vice Chair, and obviously all of Democratic Support and all officers that took part in making this a very successful budget scrutiny. So vote of thanks from myself, and I'm sure that I speak for everybody on the committee. Thank you.
And may I just second that and say to Ross, can you take the what's just been said back to your staff to say thank you? And another job for you to do is to take it back and say and show our utmost appreciation for the time, effort that they put in and the presentations made. Thank you for you. Say the meeting is now concluded.